Again, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. This is our third webinar about product management. Nice to see you. Greg is our presenter and İlhan Bey is our guest speaker today. Thanks to him also joining this session. This is the third presentation, and in first presentation, in first webinar, we have talked about what is product-led business, what is the difference from being a service company and project company, and what are the challenges and benefits. In the second session, we have talked about the transition, how to become a product-led business. What are the key points to achieve this? And today we will talk about a complete view about product management with Greg. As a short brief about Qualified One, we provide consulting and training services for tech companies related to business matters like global expansion, strategic management, digital marketing, business development and growth. Of course, product management is one of major topics related to these subjects because we want to deliver a successful product for our customers, and also being a product-led business is so valuable. We have talked about this before. And let me to introduce Greg again. Greg is our senior consultant about product management. He has shipped numbers of products in leading tech companies like IBM, SAP, and Microsoft. And currently he provides coaching and training for tech companies related to product management. Thanks to everyone again for joining us, and I will leave the stage for Greg. Thanks.
Thanks, Burak. I hope you are hearing me. Yeah. As Burak said, I've been in product management for a long time, about 20 years. I've shipped products at really big software companies, and as a consultant have worked with mainly global B2B companies. That's my background, but I've also been a founder in a couple of startups and do some guest speaking here and there, and do a lot of webinars like this. Please connect. Would love to connect with you guys, especially on LinkedIn. So I'm the only Greg Prickrell there. Feel free to connect with Burak, and yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. We have a Facebook group that has just a huge community, which is a great place to connect. It may sound strange that it's on Facebook, but it's easier to manage groups there. This is what I would like us to achieve today. I want us to define some basic terms. We all talk about product. Everybody talks about product management, but that doesn't mean we really have a shared definition. And I'm going to challenge you to look at PM from some different angles. So if you're a PM, that may give you a new way to look at product management. If you're not, it'll give you a broader perspective, a broader way to think about the discipline. And then we'll get to, what we claim we'll do in the title, which is talk about how product management can have a strategic impact, how it can be a game changer. Because when it's done the right way, it definitely changes the game. Whether that means implementing product management in your organization, really changing its maturity, increasing the impact. It is a big lever in the hands of management to improve business results for companies that ship products. And we'll talk very quickly about this idea of PM org maturity. It's one thing to think about it at the individual level. We'll also think about what does it mean to be mature at the org level. So that's our table of contents. We'll do some definitions, talk about changing the game. We'll talk a little bit about how to think about developing product managers. If you want to get the most out of the discipline and you really want it to be a game changer, the key is being able to develop people. So let's start with a couple of foundational concepts. We'll come back to these. You can look at almost anything in the world from a couple of perspectives. One perspective is outside in. It's called the functional perspective. There's also a technical perspective, and that has more to do with the implementation. And if you've been involved in, a tech company, this should resonate with you. The functional perspective is what the market has or what customers have. They don't know what's inside. It's kind of like my laptop. I have never opened my laptop. I have no idea what's in there. I have a very functional view of my laptop. When I push the power button, I expect it to come on. There are certain things when I press keys, there are certain expectations I have, but I have no idea what's in it. I don't know really how it's implemented. If I think of the people who sold it to me, they had a very implementation specific view. They think when they look at my laptop, they almost see something different. There's a, sound card, there's a motherboard, there's a processor, there's this, there's that, different views. And what we're going to talk about today is, how what product management brings to the game. And a lot of it has to do with maintaining this functional view. In the tech world, it's very easy to get wrapped up in the technology. We need somebody to remind us why we're doing what we're doing. And this is indeed how it breaks down. Product management, which we'll define in detail, is about the why and the what. Why are we doing this? What are we trying to achieve? What does the solution look like? What do we want to build? And engineering should be focused on how to build that. And it's creating this balance and empowering product managers to explore the why and the what, that we start tapping into their strategic potential. What is a product? If you ask most people, I do this all the time. I do assessments as part of my consulting work. I talk to basically everybody in the product organization, PMs, engineers. I ask them what a product is, and I rarely get a consistent answer. So I'll tell you the way I look at it. This is from a product management perspective. That let's say, some software asset becomes a product when I design it to meet the needs of a market. So not some individual customer, a market, all the people that might have interest and means to buy it. And I, as the vendor, will manage its life cycle. I'll launch it, I'll upgrade it, I'll eventually withdraw it from the market, but that's not something the customer does. They're involved, but I am responsible for evolving this thing. And when you've done those two things, you have a product. If you're not doing those two things, if you're building something for one customer, if you're building something for a few customers and you deliver it and then you move on to the next thing, by this definition, that's not a product. We might call that a customer asset or a technology asset or a consulting asset, but it's not a product. Because when I have to now meet the needs of a market, what the tech industry learned is that I need somebody who understands the life cycle of the product end to end. It's a lot harder to meet the needs of a market than it is an individual customer. We will focus on tech products or digital products. And a digital product is just a product that derives most of its value from digital technology. And they tend to take these forms. When we think about digital products, we of course think about software. We also think about hardware. It may have embedded software, but hardware that uses digital technology, and data and content is a big one, and it's growing in importance. I have clients that are making billions of dollars just selling content. That's the 90% of what they do. 10% is software so that you can access it, analyze it, but most of what they're selling is content. But what we're finding is in tech companies, it's very difficult to find a scenario that doesn't somehow involve software. Software seems to be what binds all these things together. That shouldn't be a shock, but you will hear me refer to software throughout the presentation, and that's because it just has such an important position. So if we think about developing a product, and that means discovering it in the first place and then delivering it, there are some traditional challenges that have been stumbling blocks for companies. One thing that tech companies can struggle with is focusing on the business strategy. Again, we get carried away with the technology. We know what we want to do. We lose sight of our business objectives. Along those same lines, We need to keep development focused on what excites customers, not what's fun to develop, not what's cool from a technology perspective, but what excites customers, even if implementing it is kind of boring. And then, it takes a village to deliver a product. Somebody has to get it on the shelf. We'll talk about that. We need to market it. We need to sell it. We need to support it. Somebody has to keep all these disciplines, this village, aligned. And without that, you will find that, you have suboptimal execution. You build a great product, there's nobody there to sell it. You've got a great sales force, they don't have anything to sell, that kind of thing. So this has all been kind of a buildup. What is product management? We know what a product is. What does it mean to manage it? And I think it's interesting to think about it from this perspective. If you look at a mature company in almost any industry, you will find that there's a group of people who are accountable for getting the product on the shelf and another group responsible for getting it off the shelf. Certainly the case in big software companies. Most product managers, for example, are not directly motivated, financially based on the performance of their product. That's not how they're compensated. So the way this breaks down is PM, engineering, quality, get the product on the shelf, are responsible for making it available to the market. In practice, there are other people who are accountable for getting it off the shelf. So as a product manager, you are involved in revenue. Sales is committed. They have to make certain revenue. And understanding that can help you understand some of the dysfunction in product organizations, because sometimes these people aren't talking to each other enough. You can see that marketing shows up in both places. That's because in terms of getting it on the shelf, they should be giving us strategic market insight. What are the big trends? Where are people spending money? And then getting it off the shelf, their job is to create demand for the product. Whether it's a consumer product, B2B product, that is their job, to get people interested. And they have various ways of doing that. But this is an important analogy, I think. You may not have thought of product management this way. And product managers have to work to make sure that all these people, even though they have different accountabilities, are pulling in the same direction. Know how we're going to measure success and are working together to achieve that success. So if I were to give you a very explicit definition for product management, this would be it. It is a mouthful. It's a long sentence. So rather than read it, I'll just kind of decompose it, the most important parts. And, product management is part of the product organization. As a matter of fact, they're a strategic driver. So they're not some outside entity. They work with engineering and the other disciplines we looked at to, build a successful product business. They are accountable. If anything goes wrong with the product, the first place you go is the product manager. May not be their fault, may be out of their control, but they are accountable, and that's where you start. And if there's a problem with the product manager should be aware of it. If there's a sales problem, you should be aware of it, and you should be working to get it fixed. That doesn't mean fixing it yourself, but getting it fixed. The right product means the one that the market wants, and that is really tough. Most products fail. So finding the product that the market really wants and is willing to pay for is difficult. In the right markets or in the right segments is making sure that product is made available to people who can buy it, who have an interest in buying it. You will find as a PM, you have a much bigger lever on cost than revenue. I mentioned that before. And most of that is engineering cost. So your job is to solve market problems at a cost that supports business objectives. And by allocating engineering resources, you do that. That's probably your biggest cost driver. And the whole goal is to generate business success. And what is business success? Well, it's whatever you define it to be. So as a product manager, you have to define, this means if we achieve these things, we are successful. If we don't, we're not. And we will come back to this idea of strategy So, you know, you basically are kind of the chef. And I think that is a very approachable example or analogy for a product manager. If your mom wants to know what you do, I use the example of a celebrity chef. Usually I use Gordon Ramsay. I've tried to regionalize the example this time. But if you go to the restaurant of one of these celebrity chefs, you should not expect them to be in the kitchen cutting carrots and potatoes and, you know, boiling water. They did not decorate the place. They did not get a hammer and a glue gun to make the place look good. They will not serve you probably. They're not going to be the ones who bring out, you know, your dinner when it's ready. But they are accountable for your experience. So if you go to this place, you go to one of these restaurants and you have a bad experience, that is a reflection on the celebrity chef. And that is the kind of ownership you should take as a product manager. You're not actually making the food. You are defining the menu. You're finding out what the market wants, defining a menu, an experience that will attract people. And then you rely on a lot of other people. Celebrity chefs are not, you know, staying up late at night writing ad copy. They're not filming commercials. They work with a bunch of people to make sure that this experience that they foresee is actually executed and makes people happy. So again, if you have trouble describing what you do, I think this is a great analogy and gives us insight as professionals. So if we look at what product managers actually do, we'll go into some more detail in a bit. I tend to think of it along strategic and operational lines. On the strategic side, you are defining a product strategy. That's really important. You might be supporting an ecosystem that's required to make your product successful. You might be involved in pricing. Sometimes you're not. You should be identifying and mitigating business risks. And the list goes on. You're managing strategic relationships. On the operational side, we're all more familiar with these things. You got to build the backlog, understand what requirements are. You need to manage releases. You have to define the scope for a release. You're building the roadmap, which is an expression of the strategy that you built. And, you know, you're thinking about the life cycle of the product by itself in relation to some portfolio, figuring out where you are and taking the right action depending on, you know, what you consider success. And all this is built on this foundation of what I call strategic stakeholder engagement. To get all these things done, you have to know who the most important stakeholders are, whether they're internal or external, and you have to work with them. Product management has to work with them. So, you know, product management really is the hub or the glue for these stakeholders. You can think of the PM as a bridge between the solution space and the problem space, between the on-the-shelf people and off-the-shelf people. They are a bridge between leadership and the product team. A lot of the times the messaging from leadership will come through PM to the rest of the product team. And you're a bridge between this external perspective, what the market expects, customers, partners, prospects, and internally the way we see the world. And making sure that people inside the organization understand this external perspective. It's really a pivotal, critical role. And you can characterize yourself in a bunch of ways. You're a problem solver. PMs are negotiators, they're coordinators, they are educators. You may have to educate people about what a product is, what product management is, how support should act, what is the value proposition of the product. That is an important part of your role. But above all else, product managers have to be leaders. And it's really difficult because you typically have virtually no authority. I can't lower, you know, the sales guy's bonus. I can't impact an engineer's performance review necessarily. So you've got this village that you have to pull in the right direction. You're not exactly elected. and you really don't have that much authority. So it comes down to really being able to influence people. And we'll talk about how you can do that. But regardless, what you should understand is if you want to be a product manager, you have to step up to this leadership role. And leadership has to give you the room to do this, but it is, personal initiative. No matter how your role is defined, what powers you're given through Scrum or organizational policy, nobody can give this kind of leadership to you. You just have to step up and take it. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. It's interesting, especially in immature organizations, to talk about what product management is not. You're not a project manager. Projects are different things. That's a different discipline. There's certainly some things you can learn there and apply to be a more effective product manager, but wildly different. You are not just a problem solver. So I'm seeing that more in the literature now, that product managers should only focus on the problem. No, you have to understand the problem and have a strong opinion about the solution, and then work with engineering to build that product that will solve the problems you've identified. A good PM isn't just a release clerk. They're not just out there taking somebody else's orders and making sure the product comes out on time. They are driving the strategy. They're working with leadership to align that strategy. Product managers are not marketers. These things are related, but marketing is a different discipline. Different set of skills, different set of competencies, different types of people, different personalities even. So don't get confused there. And if you have an engineering background, you have to remember it's not your job anymore to be an engineer. You're not so much about the how, you're about the why and the what. So I think it can be super valuable to remind ourselves from time to time, what we should not be doing. And if we find ourselves doing a lot of these things, figuring out how we can get back to doing what product managers should be doing. I worked with a client that asked a really interesting question. They had a bunch of people who had product manager in their title, but I didn't think were product managers, and neither did they. But we were having difficulty putting our finger on exactly why not. And in this case, what they wanted to do is, in terms of titles, they wanted to do what they called calibration. They wanted to make sure that if you are, called a product manager, that you're doing product management. And that's important. If there's not a consistent definition, if you're not doing what people expect, especially people from outside as a product manager, it erodes the brand. It confuses people about what product management does. So we went through an exercise where we defined the sine qua non. This is a Latin phrase, which means the essence. So what are the minimum set of things you have to be doing to consider yourself a product manager? This was very tough. I haven't seen this done anywhere else, but we defined this and used it in this calibration process. And these are the things we came up with in their context. I think this gives you insight as to whether you're a product manager or just kind of a product manager in name only. So the first thing is you should own the product strategy. Doesn't mean you define it by yourself, but you're responsible for putting it together, understanding the stakeholders and defining the strategy. You're responsible for expressing that strategy as a roadmap. You own the roadmap. If I go to anybody in the organization, I should be able to ask who owns the roadmap, and they should instantly say product management. I believe you also have to be working closely with engineering to deliver the right product. This isn't about throwing some requirements over the wall and going out and talking to more customers. If you're not part of the solution, if you're not, dealing with engineering directly or through some proxies like maybe product owners, there's a good chance you're not really doing product management. And the last two are product management. The last two are a little controversial, but in a product organization, engineering is there to implement the product, and you set the priorities. You determine what gets built and how they spend their time. And it is important not only that you work with them, but that you accept what they generate, that you are empowered to say, yes, we can take this to market and we will win. Or, you know what, we messed this up. I told you to do the wrong thing. You implemented it poorly, whatever it is, but we're not ready to go. So you can think about this in your own context. You can think about this in your organization. What are the minimum things that we should be doing to call ourselves product managers? And how many of these things are you doing? And if you're not doing them, is it because you didn't think of it? Is it because you are not allowed? Or the organization doesn't understand or respect the value? So, you know, we've talked about what a product is. We've talked about product management at kind of a general level. We've talked about kind of the minimum set of criteria, things you should be doing to consider yourself a product manager. So how do you take this product management and make it a game changer? How do you make it so that there's really this huge impact to the business? And I think you have to think about that along a few dimensions. So I think the first thing you need is really empowered PMs. And that means that they themselves have stepped up to their leadership role to pull this team together and achieve this explicit business motivation. So business motivation refers to vision, goals, objectives, strategy. You have to write these things down and get people excited about them. If you want to be strategic and change the game, you need to bring market insight, not just customer insight. Customers are the part of the market that's already bought our product. You have to have more market insight than almost anybody. And you have to really love the problem and the solution. It's not about one or the other. So if you want PM to have this strategic impact, these are the things that I would look for from PMs. What does leadership need to do? They need to make sure that the position is staffed. If I've got one person trying to manage 5 products, you know, that's probably not going to work. They have to create an environment where PMs can be developed professionally, and that costs money, it takes time. Leadership has to actively support and nurture product management. They have to stand behind them. Product managers will have to do unpopular things sometimes. And they have to create space for product managers to grow and make decisions, or they end up with these kind of product janitors. And one of the best things they can do is really coach them. You know, take their experience and pass that on to product managers so that product managers more and more can really run a product business. And if I think about it at the organizational or process level, you know, I have to allocate resources to make sure that I understand the processes that comprise. Product management is not a process, it's a discipline. But there are processes around discovering products, building roadmaps, creating strategies, building business cases that I need to understand. And I have to, you know, have processes in place with owners that improve. And I also have to have a job architecture. I have to know what it means to be a product manager, because I have to evaluate the people I have. I have to attract new people, and I have to give them some path. That is a problem in some organizations. PMs are happy, but they don't know what the next step is. And over time, you will lose people. What are some secret weapons that product managers can use to have, you know, more strategic impact than if they don't do these things? These are things that I've learned over the years. The first one is really understanding problems thoroughly, market problems specifically. So taking time to really understand the problem before I jump to the solution, that's not done nearly enough. And if you can get really good at solving problems, you can become really good at product management. Defining this business motivation, so writing down the vision, goals, objectives, and strategy. Goals are general things we would like to achieve. Objectives are time-bound and measurable, and you have to write it down, socialize it, and get people on board. And then you have to use that, you know, strategy and those goals to do prioritization to figure out what you should invest in. So there are a lot of techniques around prioritization. It all starts with understanding what you're trying to achieve. Developing this market insight, not just data, not just talking about the size of the market or the growth of the market, but seeing things that other people don't see, connecting dots. If you can do that, you will win hearts and minds. And a big secret weapon that I've really started investing in the last few years is really understanding the business model. So think of that as the commercial aspects. Your job isn't just to deliver a product, it's to build a sustainable product business. And one of the best ways to do that, one of the best frameworks for thinking about that is through a business model. So, you know, if we want product managers to be game changers, going out and just hiring people who are perfect for our organization is not practical or even possible. Even these days, it's a tight market. I have a lot of clients who are having a lot of trouble finding the PMs that they need. So if you want to be successful at this long term, you will have to develop people. And if you're a product manager, you should think very seriously about strategic self-development. And how should you think about developing your product managers, or how should you think about developing as a PM? Here's the model that I've come up with. There are 4 areas that you need to think about. The first one is product competency, and competency is a really high bar. You have to be really good at all the things we associate with, you know, discovering and building products. Doing product discovery, understanding the life cycle, doing releases, managing backlogs, all those things. And that can take a career to get good at those things. So it's a matter of looking at what's most important to you now, where you're weakest, and developing yourself. In the tech world, it's important to have technical knowledge. Knowledge is a lower bar than competency. You don't have to be a technician, but you better understand how software or how digital products get built. You need to understand something about how solutions are architected, because eventually that will impact your business. You need to understand trends. As a PM, you need to think about your domain expertise. How are you going to differentiate yourself from the rest of the market? Are you good at telecom? Do you know billing? Do you know SaaS, e-commerce? And you should develop your knowledge accordingly. You may be a fintech person. And you know that is hugely valuable, but it's something that you have to think about and develop. And then we all know there are a ton of soft skills, and the soft skills that are most important depend somewhat on your level of experience, your kind of work context, what's going on. What I will say that's overlooked a lot is the most important soft skill to me, without a doubt, is time management. As a PM, if you cannot manage your time, eventually you will fail. If you're a good PM, there will always be unreasonable demands on your time. But there are a lot of others. You have to be a great communicator. You have to learn how to negotiate, decision making. You have to know how to present well. That's part of communication. So you should think about these dimensions. Maybe for each one, identify 1 or 2 things that you are not good at and put a plan in place to address those things. If we think about this product competency, I'm not going to go into the details. You can get these slides. This is a way to think about your job as a PM, or what you should expect of PMs as a leader. They need to have business leadership skills. We talked about a lot of these. They have to be able to define the product from that functional perspective we talked about. That's the more operational aspects. And although you're not a marketer, you will get involved in promoting the product. You will go to events. You will be on customer calls sometimes. You will help define demos. You will participate in go-to-market. So there is this promotional element. All these things, again, are built on this foundation of knowing how to engage with my stakeholders, internal and external. Right now, for this task, which ones are more important, and how do I make them happy? I want to make a quick note that some companies take combinations of things to market. It's not just hardware, it's not just software, it's not just services, it's a combination of those things. I call that solution management, and it's an emerging area. So if you don't see yourself in some of these slides, you know, solution management is product management at just another level. There are some differences, but the same kind of responsibilities. You have to build a business, you have to define what the solution should look like, and you have to help promote it. You know, up to now, we've talked a little bit, mainly we've addressed specifically, you know, how you develop yourself as an individual PM. You also have to take a look at an org level. If you want PM to be this big lever, to be this game changer, you have to look at it as a function in the organization. And we've developed this maturity model. I talked earlier about an assessment. We do a lot of activities, and we can calculate a maturity score for the organization. But the idea here is that I know I have mature PM when I really understand the important processes, when I have the right competency, those are the building blocks that we looked at, and when the organization is set up the right way. So you can have great processes, you can have great people. If the organization is set up incorrectly so that PM is not empowered or they're not able to, access important stakeholders, they can still fail. So maturity of the function overall is something that all product managers and leaders should be thinking about. The highest level in our maturity model is just continuous improvement. It means you really understand these core things and are constantly making incremental improvements so that it has even a bigger impact. That is what I had for you today. I hope you took something away from the definition of a product and a solution. I hope these kind of different perspectives on product management maybe made you think about your role or the role of product management in a different way. I hope you understand some of the key elements it takes for PM not to just be there and, keep the ship afloat, but how to have this game-changing impact. It's complex. The PMs have to be empowered, leadership has to be behind it, and the org has to support what they do. What I would suggest now, that's all I had. Maybe we have some questions. I would be happy to answer those.
Okay, Greg, thanks a lot for your valuable presentation, Greg. Again, it's so beneficial for me, at least. Maybe people can prepare their questions. By the way, I want to give speech for İlhan Bey. Most probably the community will knows about İlhan Bey. He raises the awareness about product management in our tech community in Turkey, and thanks to him for his leadership. Also, I want to say this. İlhan Bey, would you like to add something about product management challenge, or how can I say? For example, on my site, I recognize that there is a lack of strategy in our community, I think, to creating a strategy and processing a strategy. So what can you say about product management in Turkey?
Well, thanks, Burak. I think product management in Turkey is, to say the least, it's not mostly it's not known, and if it is known, it's not well understood. So, I mean, I like this PM sine qua non definition, the essential definition of product management. I mean, I have been looking into the averages in the industrial world about use of product managers. I mean, it's 7 to 10 engineers per product manager in the most companies in the US. So you need a product manager for 7 to 10 engineers. In Turkey, assuming we have 150,000 engineers, we should have 20,000 product managers. But I don't think there are more than 20 or 100. And the ones also don't match to Greg's definition of essential product management usually. I think we are going to be improving this. I also like the sacred weapons slide. I think it's not really black and white, and there's a good definition of product management. I spent about 20 years in the US, and I have been communicating with many friends in the US about what makes a good product manager. How do you prepare yourself to be a product manager? Usually, most of them say there is no proper preparation for a product manager. Product managers are really raised inside the company. So they are recruited among the people who is a good fit for product management. When it is looked, I found that the majority of the product managers are computer science graduates who eventually got a BA degree. But that doesn't mean that product management is limited to those people. I have also heard that people who don't have computer science or even engineering degrees make real good product managers, whereas people with those diplomas are not good fits. Following that, I think it's great that you have this program, and Greg is trying to share his knowledge and experience from several countries and companies. I am optimistic. Well, with so little product management know-how, it is easy to double or triple it. You know. So I think this program that Burak and Greg you have established, I think it will help a lot for people to understand product management.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, İlhan Bey. Well, next week, actually, we have a training course in HTK, and a couple of attendees also today. A couple of attendees will also join our training next week, and we try to open a class with the technology group end of the month. So if you're interested in trainings or workshops, you can contact with us. Lastly, is there any question about today's subject topics? Would you say something? Okay, I think it's okay for now. Thanks a lot, everybody, joining us. It's nice to be with you today, and thanks, Greg and İlhan Bey, again for your contributions. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.